Hi, happy Wednesday. So, I wanted to pop in and talk to you all about the difference more. I've been talking a lot about worry, and I want to talk to you all about the difference between worrying and anxiety, and also then worrying and planning. Because I think they're all interconnected, but they also sometimes can be used interchangeably. And I think it's helpful for us to create distinctions so we know exactly what's going on and we know how we can best take care of ourselves. So let's start with the difference between anxiety and worry. So anxiety is a lot more general, where worrying stems from really specific concerns. So anxiety is kind of like the umbrella, and worry a lot of times is a specific thing. So, right, like the umbrella of anxiety, you might have health anxiety, you might have social anxiety, you might have test taking anxiety, right? These are like the general things, but then the worries would specifically be failing the test, failing the class, having a panic attack during the test, getting the coronavirus, someone you love getting hurt. Those are the specific things under the umbrella of anxiety. Anxiety also tends to be more general. It kind of stems more from unknowns and fears, where worry tends to be a little bit more realistic. Worrying tends to be worried, again, because it's more specific. It tends to be more of something that possibly could happen or has happened in the past, that you're trying to give yourself this feeling of control by worrying about it. Both of them can completely cause us pain for sure, and definitely can create emotional distress. But a lot of times with anxiety, it can cause us to shut down and not take any action, where worrying can actually prompt you into problem solving and planning. And then the other thing is anxiety often comes with verbal thoughts and mental imagery, where worries typically only have those verbal thoughts, but they don't often have like the flashes or the really intense, imagery of something bad happening. But worrying is one component of anxiety. To be diagnosed, for example, with generalized anxiety disorder, you would have to meet other criteria that I'm not really going to go into today. Personally, I don't love diagnoses because I just think that a lot of times we pathologize or make things into normal and abnormal. And I prefer to look at things from the perspective of most of us do different things and end up in different habits or maladaptive, unhealthy patterns because we're trying to survive something or some way. And developing worry or anxiety serves us temporarily in some way of we feel more in control when we're worrying about something, even if long-term it can cause negative consequences. So I just personally think that's a more compassionate approach in general. And I think with ourselves, sometimes if we diagnose ourselves with something, it can be a relief, but also sometimes with diagnosing, it can feel like there's something wrong with us and we can get stuck in that. So that's just a little aside. Moving on to, right, so both of these things can cause us to plan, but worry really, there's a difference then between worrying and planning, right? So planning is really specific. It's, let's say you have right, let's say you have health anxiety, and under that health anxiety, you have some worry about the coronavirus. The plan might be, okay, I'm going to start washing my hands more. I am going to avoid taking public transportation. I'm going to wipe down my desk and areas at work. I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to really engage in self-care the next couple weeks. That might be your plan. You might also need to adjust your plan if something happens or things change, but there's a specific thing that you come up with to do, and then you are typically able to let it go. Where worrying is a lot more automatic. It sometimes can even be kind of like compulsive, where you're just looping around specific worst case scenarios. And it can often be characterized by racing thoughts and by just repeating things over and over again. And some of these what if this happens? So sometimes worrying can also get addictive because we can feel temporarily better by worrying about it. Like I said, we get this false sense of control, but then later on down the road, it doesn't actually make us feel better because it's not actually productive. So in those moments, my recommendation with worrying is if you're doing something to plan and you come up with a plan, that's definitely helpful. But sometimes if we get stuck in this really repetitive thought of worrying, people start to Google and then they come up with more things to worry about. And then they get stuck in this pattern and these loops of, and then they go talk to someone and then they get more information, or they worry someone else. And then we have someone else that we're also worried about together. And it kind of just spirals, compared to make your plan and then try to come back into the present moment. Try to ground yourself. I'm not saying don't stay updated with things that are going on, but I think really focusing on yourself and what you can do versus generally with the media and with getting caught up into the worst case scenarios aren't helpful. We live in this really strange world where we're connected to the entire planet, and our brains aren't developed to really do that. So it's really scary when we're so connected to people all over the world, especially when these health epidemics come up. So I want you, as much as you can, to try to focus on what you can control, what you can do to take preventative measures to take care of yourself and your loved ones. Stay informed, but try not to get caught up in the hysteria, because all of that worrying and anxiety also will have a negative impact